Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hit Play Podcast. I am one of your hosts, Isaac Jimenez. James Harding will join me shortly. First of all, thank you guys for listening to the very first episode of the Hit Play Podcast. On this podcast, we talk about everything film and television, whether that's recent news or revisiting old classics like we do today. On this episode, we talk about Christopher Nolan, kind of go through his career. When we originally recorded this podcast, we were kind of hoping for an hour and a half to maybe 2 hours worth of content, and we ended up getting three. So we decided the best way to present this was to split it up. And you'll be listening to part one today, which will cover his first four films from Following all the way to Batman Begins. Part two and three will hopefully come out within the next couple of weeks. Do be warned though, there are spoilers for the films that we talk about in this episode as well as future episodes. So enjoy our very first episode and welcome to the Hit Play Podcast. Yeah, Christopher Nolan, this low-key director that we both admire. Well, let me ask you, what's your opinion? Because I think people who know me know my thoughts on Christopher
You
Nolan.
love, you worship.
My appreciation for him as a artist. But what are
I would say that.
your thoughts on him?
I do appreciate him as a director. I think I'm one of those old men who complains about superhero movies being trash and all too similar to each other. So someone like Nolan is a good breath of fresh air every now and then.
Yeah, he's
I say.
definitely. I think especially as he got later on in his career, he kind of somehow blended big blockbuster movies with more intimate movies.
Like art house. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, he sometimes he strikes out with it, which I think we'll get into later on. But
Yeah, sometimes.
I think for the most part, he kind of hits it on the head, especially with the Dark Knight trilogy, which we'll obviously get into
Yeah.
because those are three of the greatest movies. But
He manages to bring his art house experimental, like the way that he edits and shoots films, he manages to merge that with his like more accessible stories.
yeah, and there's a lot with his films. There's a little bit of depth. It's
A
not
lot to
just
get into, yeah.
stereotypical beat 'em up action movies and stuff like that. There's it his movies lend themselves well to the rewatches, which I enjoy because I like to watch his movies.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So a
So
little
we're gonna
bit.
start with the following.
Well, actually, I just wanted to kind of bring up some tidbits about him before we get into his career as a
Oh yeah,
whole. Um,
personal history.
so he studied, yeah. He studied English literature at University College London. He pursued an English degree, not a film degree, because it gives a different take on things. That's his quote, not mine. He has produced 11 movies. 7 of them are in the top 250 of IMDb. Take that what you will, but that's still pretty impressive. Do you know which
Just
7 they
him
are?
or him and his wife?
Well, him and his wife have produced every movie that he has directed together. So
Hmm.
I guess him and his wife, but I don't know. Do you know which 7 movies they are though?
I'm gonna guess Dark Knight,
Okay,
Inception,
okay,
Interstellar, Dark Knight Rises,
okay.
mm, possibly Dunkirk.
Do you want me to tell you if you're right or wrong?
Yes.
No, so it's not Dunkirk.
Batman Begins,
Yep,
Memento,
yep.
Tenet.
No.
Dang it.
So the
What's the last one?
so the
Prestige?
four, yeah, Prestige is in the top 50. So the
Okay.
4 that aren't in are Insomnia, Dunkirk, Following, and Tenet, which is his first 2 films, or 2 of his first films, and then the last 2 films,
His
which I
last
thought was pretty
two
interesting.
recent films.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, but
He's
um
fallen off
he's overrated. He has
a
grossed
little bit.
over $5 billion. His films have grossed over $5 billion in the box office, which, you look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe and you're like, that's not really that much. But for one director to
One director, that's
over
insane.
11 films, and he had the Batman trilogy, but other than that, a lot of his films are not, marquee franchises.
I think
I thought that was
Inception and Interstellar were both over a billion box office as well.
Interstellar, and which one?
Inception.
So Inception was a little short. I was 800 and what was it at? 836 million at the box office. Interstellar only made, I quote, around only 701 million.
Wow.
So
Uh,
he had $2
pocket
billion
change.
movies. Yeah, he had $2 billion movies in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, which makes sense considering that they're both Batman movies. And that is also not including Tenet, because Tenet was released during a pandemic, and so it wasn't able to make any money. That number would probably be a little bit
A little bit
higher.
higher.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
I wonder if they're gonna re-release it.
I wonder too, because it feels like re-releases just a lot. It feels like movies are more likely to be re-released nowadays, I guess, because it's more accessible to re-release a movie. Like we saw, what was it, last year or the year before, when the Avengers, they re-released halfway, like 6 months after they stopped showing it in theaters, just so they could get the
Yeah.
$2 billion mark or something like that. So I think we'll
Yeah.
see. I think because Nolan is such a aficionado of movie theaters, he's even said like, hey, we need to keep movie theaters open during a pandemic. That
Yeah.
I think we're definitely gonna see Tenet in some degree. It probably won't have a big release again, but I could see them doing like a limited release in certain, especially in IMAX, and especially because there's
Definitely help, I
nothing
think.
out right now. Like the only thing it would be
True.
competing with would be, I don't even know. Can you name any movies that are out right now?
I can only imagine that if Disney re-released Mulan in theaters, who it competes with.
If Mulan gets re-released, I'm joining a picket line because I do that. That's a different topic for another day. But I have problems with Disney right now.
Moving
So
on.
so yeah. Getting into his filmography. We started out with with Following. I don't know. You have me saying The Following now, and it drives me crazy. But
I say the following every single time because I'm stupid, but it's
it's
following.
it's
Just
Following.
following.
It's just Following. It came out in 1998. It filmed. Yeah, it came out in September of 1998. It's a 110-minute runtime. Has an 81% on Rotten Tomatoes, 60 on Metacritic. Take those with what you will. I don't really put a lot of stock into those, but they're good.
Kind of good metrics.
Yeah, they're like a good comparison to his other works. This idea for this film came to him when his apartment was robbed, which is kind of That
I
sounds like
remember
such
hearing about that one
that
time.
sounds like such a Nolan thing, right? Like, hey, I just lost all of my prized possessions. Let me write a movie about this.
I can make a story out of this.
So it stars Jeremy Theobald. Which, do you know what other Nolan movie Jeremy Theobald is in?
I don't even remember that
He's in a
name.
super small role, but if you've seen this movie enough, you'll know. You can like yesterday I was watching this movie. I noticed it immediately.
Oh, okay. He's recognizable.
Yeah, he's in Batman Begins. He's one of the engineers, I guess, in the water pressure plant when
Oh, I remember.
Liam
Okay,
Neeson
yeah.
is taking the train downtown.
Yeah, I remember now.
Yeah. He has one
Oh,
line
not
in it.
bad.
So I thought that was pretty cool. I saw him and I was like, I did the Leo meme where he points at
You're
the
pointing
TV
at the screen
screen.
like, oh my god.
Yeah, I was like, that's pretty cool.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, so this was a $6,000 budget, which is absurd.
That's real pocket change right there.
It did have a box office run. It made only 48,000, which isn't too great, but for a film with virtually no marketing and only
Very
110
small
minutes,
release, limited release. Yeah.
that
They're
is
probably only released in London as well for the most part.
100%. It was all written, directed, filmed, and edited by Nolan himself. Shot in black and white, 60 millimeter film. That film was bought by Nolan himself. Did you know about the shooting schedule?
Yeah, they filmed. Everybody was all like pretty much unknown or just unprofessional actors. They had like all real jobs. They only filmed on weekends throughout the course of an entire year.
Yeah, that when I read that, that was like, oh my, the dedication to only shoot and edit for a
Only Nolan.
year on the weekends is it's kind of inspiring in a way, to be honest. Like this, he had somewhat of a name to himself, with his short films in college, but not really a huge name. And he was just like, you know what? Let me just pay my way to make a feature film.
Remember, he said his mom was the catering. She would make sandwiches for everyone.
So they would only shoot 15 minutes of footage every shooting day. Was another thing I
Oh
read.
yeah, I remember. They would rehearse it like insanely, so they would only do 1 or 2 takes.
Yeah,
Film is expensive.
yeah.
Actual film stock is really expensive,
Isn't that
but that makes
crazy?
sense. You're on a budget, you want to save your film stock.
I thought that was, oh man, very inspiring. So
Yeah.
yeah. So this
And I
movie.
feel like
Oh, go ahead.
I'll say this: to some degree, I feel like that do it yourself aesthetic or just approach has really never left Nolan either.
No, I agree. I think he takes, especially with this film, he and throughout his career, he takes risks because he wants to and because he has a vision for it, and
Yeah.
because
And in little ways, like using practical effects instead of CGI.
yeah, he's just like,
Or,
I'm just gonna do it, and nobody's gonna tell me
yeah.
no, and if anybody tells me no, they're wrong. So and
Like most Hollywood films would have like second unit or even third units, and I remember Nolan said that he would never do that.
no, he
If he
doesn't,
doesn't have to be on set, he doesn't want to film it.
which is both maddening if you're a producer
Yeah,
slash
if you're
studio
spending millions of
executive.
dollars, yeah,
But it's also pretty if you're a guy like Nolan who's an artiste in a way, you kind of
control
have to have
freak
it
is
that
the
way.
word you're looking
Yeah,
for.
or a control freak as well. Well, I don't like you bad mouthing Nolan right now.
Little column A, little column B,
The ends justify the means, though. Am I right? In a way.
and following, not the following, following.
Following, yeah, yeah, yeah. So yeah, when was the first time you saw this? I saw this recently, but when did you come across Following?
I saw it a few years ago. I was in high school.
Oh wow.
I remember that was when I was in my big Christopher Nolan greatest director of all time. I remember watching it, and even back then, as his first film, he still does a lot of editing tricks where he will reshuffle scenes so that they take place out of order and presenting the story in a non-linear fashion. Even just as a noir film, like it's supposed to be a very classic noir film, filmed in black and white when it didn't have to be.
hmm
But old film noir was just like that. It really touches into, I think, a lot of the touchstones of his career. It's presenting stories in uh, ways that reflect how the story happens. So he plays with editing, he plays with time, even
hmm
just using black and white to recreate that aesthetic genre of noir and psychological thriller. That's his bread and butter right there.
Yeah, he's very unconventional with this film. If he had presented this in a more linear fashion, I think it wouldn't have been as impactful. And
Yeah,
he definitely probably wouldn't. I mean, I don't want to say he wouldn't have gone on to make Memento, but I don't think he would have had the funding that Memento had if
I
he
don't think
didn't.
people would have trusted him to make Memento.
Yeah, exactly. And so for him to first of all just say, "Hey, for $6,000, I made 110 minute feature film," is impressive beyond itself, even if the movie was crap. But the fact that it's not crap and it's actually pretty, it's pretty good, honestly. Like
It's pretty good.
when I first watched it, I was, it's obviously a little raw, it's a little rough. The acting is whatever because they're not professional actors in the common sense. But I think I watched it about a week ago, and the week up until we recorded this podcast, I'm just more and more impressed with what he was able to do with such a limited budget. I mean, they had $8 for the audio budget, and that was just because they bought one blank audio tape. That I mean, that,
I can't even imagine.
I can't comprehend.
Trust.
the fact that he was able to just make a film that's so smart and sophisticated on such a limited budget, it's really impressive. And like you said, it does. This movie does bring a lot of what are what we like about Nolan, as far as his nonlinear structures, his editing styles, and the tight camera work that he'll bring without his films. But I think it also highlights a lot of his downfalls, and that's sometimes flat characters and sometimes one-dimensional characters. And sometimes it works
Yeah,
because you like your characters to have a set goal. But for a film like this, and for films coming up that we'll get into, I think he sometimes gets a little too one-dimensional with it, and it there's not really a whole lot of depth there that we can explore beyond what we're watching.
yeah, for sure. He is a exposition the director.
That too, the dialogue at times feels a little exposition-y, which when you build worlds like Nolan's, you kind of have to be exposition-y. You just kind of wished it was more
Not
Shakespearean and flowy versus kind of bland at times.
yeah, yeah,
Um, but I really think that this is one of, if not the best debut feature film that has ever been produced by a director. So,
yeah.
any last thoughts on Following?
I think it's a good film. Watch it on Criterion Channel, I'd say,
Criterion, or you can
or
rent it on,
independent film companies. Yeah,
or you can rent it on Amazon for $4.99, like I did.
yeah, not a bad option either. It has to go back on Netflix though. They need to put it back on
Yeah,
Netflix.
I don't know why one of these. I mean, I guess HBO Max can do it now that HBO has their own app, but one of these streaming services needs to buy all of his, or just a director. Just be like, hey, Tarantino, I'm buying all of your films for 3 years, and we're putting them all on our app. I don't know
Yeah,
why. Like Following and Insomnia, I had to rent. Dark Knight and Batman Begins is on Netflix, but The Dark Knight Rises isn't. I don't know. It was just I was upset. Inception is getting taken off next week off of Netflix. I, I don't even know where
it's just the
Interstellar's
world
at.
we live in. Same.
But
I have it on Blu-ray. I don't care where it's
yeah,
on.
no, I have all these movies on Blu-ray, so I'm just kind of shouting at birds right now. This
Well,
applies to me not at all. So, yeah, yeah.
Memento
For
from $6,000, nearly $4 million in budget.
oh yeah. Memento, which came out in 2000. Like it was a $4.5 million budget, made $40 million at the box office, which is pretty impressive.
Good for an independent film.
It had Oscar noms in Best Original Screenplay and Best Film Editing. It stars Guy Pearce, Carrie Ann Moss, Joe Pantoliani. He's just Ralph Cifaretto to me if you watch The Sopranos.
Mm.
This is shot by Wally Feister. Fister? Is it Feister or
This is
Fister?
his first time working with Wally Fisher, I think it's pronounced.
Fisher. Okay. Yeah. This is his first of many collaborations.
He works with him all the way up through Dark Knight Rises, I believe.
Yes. Interstellar was when Hoyt took over.
Oh yeah, impronounceable name.
Yeah, I don't know how to pronounce.
Uh,
Um, did you know that Brad Pitt was originally considered for the role that Guy Pearce takes, which is Leonard?
Now that would have been interesting.
I don't think it would have worked.
No?
I think Guy Pearce works. I mean, obviously we know who Guy Pearce is now, but he's not an A list. I don't think he's probably not even like a B plus list if you broke it down like that. No disrespect to Guy Pearce, you make great movies. You're a phenomenal actor, especially
Yeah,
in this movie. But
yeah, for sure.
I think if we had Brad Pitt, I think it wouldn't have been the same. I think we would have been. It's kind of like I call it the Mark Wahlberg effect, where I don't feel like I'm watching a movie where Mark Wahlberg's playing a character. I feel like I'm just watching Mark Wahlberg, and that's how I feel
Yeah,
about probably 90% of Brad Pitt's movies, where I'm watching Brad Pitt be in a movie and not
yeah.
an actor or a character played by
So
Brad
much,
Pitt.
so much of this movie is that character, the Guy Pearce character. Like you're in his point of view the entire film. You never leave his side, and I think that he really is that character. like everybody talks about the editing in this film, but when I think of this film, I think of Guy Pearce and that character. Just
Oh,
like his face is just associated with this movie so closely.
oh yeah, yeah. No, I think Guy Pearce definitely elevates this movie to another level. I think the editing, while it's good, it's sometimes confusing at it's confusing at the beginning because you don't know what exactly is going on. But I think Guy Pearce's he just has a charisma to him that you're just
Yeah,
kind of entranced by, and you want to keep watching to see who this man is. Um, I think
absolutely.
it was interesting to read that the screenplay was actually written that way with the cross-cutting editing where the middle is the end. Uh,
Mm.
I don't. What are your thoughts on that? Because I have my own thoughts, but I want to hear yours first.
I remember even when I knew how the film was structured before watching it, when I watched it the first time, I was still confused. So I feel like it's it's interesting, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah,
And I've only seen it the one time. I feel like if I went in a second time, I would have to like prepare myself mentally.
yeah, I would agree with that. I rewatched it uh last night, and I was just the whole time I was watching it, I was just trying to piece together what had just happened while trying to watch what's going on now. And while
Yeah,
I can appreciate his risk taking, I mean, this is a huge jump from following to be so uh such a risk.
experimental.
Yeah, experimental. There you go. Thank you. It's so experimental in his screen, his act structure and how he wants it to go. But I think it kind of hinders it in a little bit because you're like I said, you're always trying to figure out what just happened and you're trying to piece it together to go forward. And this is the same problem I have with Tenet, which we'll get into much later. But it's hard trying to piece together something that's happening while something else is going on. And I
That's
don't.
one thing about Nolan I'll say I think also is a problem that arises early in his films in his career. That he, as much as we like to make fun of him for writing nothing but exposition, he gets away with not explaining a lot of things
In this movie?
in a lot of his films, and especially Memento.
Okay. Explain on that.
Like the I was saying earlier that part of the film that we like Guy Pearce is because we're so in his perspective, we see everything from his point of view. The editing mirrors that. He only remembers what had happened like what was it? It was like it was retrograde amnesia or something like that.
Yeah,
But the
yeah,
whole
yeah.
film is told backwards because he only remembers what happened previously, but he doesn't remember what happened for that. So it's told backwards to be from his actual point of view, how he would remember things.
Yeah.
But none of that is explained immediately. And
Yeah.
it isn't really until halfway through the film that you get that.
Yeah, I think once I forgot, I think like 4 or 5 scenes of jumping back and forth where you're like, "Oh, they're uh they're telling this backwards." I mean, the first time you see it, you're
Because
like,
not
"Okay,
only
that's
that,
interesting," but it takes a while to actually
not
understand.
only is the film told backwards, but there are also scenes that are going forwards in time.
Yeah, the black and white.
That are like interspersed. The black and white scenes are all forward in time.
Mhm.
So those are thrown in also just to mess with you, I guess.
Yeah, this is
It feels
Nolan.
like it.
This is Nolan's first foray into mind-blowing us. And I
Yeah.
mean, it works. It's a very passable. It's a good film. I'll say that much. But I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
I think it is a little rough, and I don't think this is a bold take. I'm gonna say it, but I don't think it lends itself really well to a rewatch. I
It
don't.
is a bit gimmicky.
Yeah, it's a little gimmicky, and then I think you kind of need to be confused to watch this. You need to understand. You need to be Leonard. Basically, we're basically a character in
Yeah.
this movie. Nolan, where's my paycheck for being a character in this movie? Because
Well, I mean, part of that is just because how effectively confusing it is.
yeah, it is very confusing. Yeah, I had seen it and then I watched it again last week, like I said, and I just it was hurting my brain. I could only watch like half of it, and that's also because it was 4 o'clock in the morning. But
Oh my god.
my brain was hurting after watching this. Yeah, I don't think it doesn't lend itself really well to a rewatch. It's still
I
it.
appreciate it. I appreciate it, but that's probably about it.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'll buy it because it's Nolan. You gotta have a Nolan collection.
It's not insultingly confusing.
Yeah, yeah. Have you
It's
watched?
just confusing.
So there's a version of it where you can. I think it's on the Blu-ray. I think it's on a DVD special features thing where you can actually watch it in order. Have you seen that version?
No, not at all.
Yeah, I don't think I would watch that because I think like following, you need to watch it the way Nolan presents it and not the way that
Yeah.
you should watch it
It's
or
meant to be confusing.
chronologically. Yeah, exactly.
We're saying it's not that good because it's confusing, but it's meant to be confusing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So I would not watch that version just on principle.
It's like watching the Godfather trilogy where they put the parts of Godfather Part 2 where it's Don Corleone, the Vito, where it's Vito's younger. They put that first and then they put the rest of it. That just sounds not interesting to me.
Yeah, no.
Any last no last thoughts or anything on following or Memento, sorry?
Memento, it is an okay film. In the tier list, I gave it an A. It's probably more like an A minus.
It's a light A, as Anthony Fantano says.
Yeah, it's a strong B to a light A.
Yeah, I think I have it in the B tier. Yeah, just because of that. I think I had it in the B tier before I rewatched it, just basing it off of what I remembered, and then rewatching it, I was like, yeah, this is definitely a B tier.
It is a very bold second film. That's for
Oh,
sure.
100%, 100%.
Absolutely.
But it got
Not
him
as bold
into
as Insomnia.
into Warner
Got
Brothers.
him into America.
So, and America. So, we got to be grateful
But
for
it's
that.
not as bold as Insomnia.
Insomnia. Okay, start off with the Insomnia.
This is not an original screenplay. It's based off of a
Nope.
Norwegian film, right?
Swedish. But yes.
Swedish. Yes. So I have not seen the original Swedish film, but my opinion of Insomnia is not very high, so I probably won't watch the original.
Yeah, I agree.
This is an okay film.
Yeah,
It's
so
almost like I will say this. It's almost like because Memento is very bold and in your face. It's almost like Nolan pulled back a little bit.
I think this was Warner Brothers. This is the classic, hey, we're going to hire this up and coming director to make this film that we optioned.
Star-studded film.
Yeah, so that way we can see what he's got and then I mean, you see it all the time, right? Like a low director will make this somewhat star-studded film where you're like, how did they get that job? It's just a director. I mean, it's just a studio trying to give a director a chance.
Yeah.
So Insomnia, $46 million budget, $113 million at the box office. Stars Al Pacino, Robin Williams, Hilary Swank, Marie Tierney, Martin Donovan. It's his first film that's going to be partnered with Warner Brothers, where they distribute it. 92 on Rotten Tomatoes, which I found very interesting and kind of reinforces my concerns with Rotten Tomatoes. 7.2 on IMDb, 78 on Metascore, which is, I think I would put it there. I think I put it at 7.
That's fair.
It is a remake from a Swedish.
Tier list,
Yeah, it's a remake from the Swedish film. Like I said, do you know who's in the Swedish film?
not at all.
Stellan Skarsgård.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
I thought that was
Now
pretty
I might have a reason to watch
it. I love me some Stellan Skarsgård. Yeah, I think, like you said, this movie is it is. I will say this without a doubt. It is his most conventional film. It is a very straightforward, straight shooter kind of drama.
Yeah,
Um, it
it's
plays
like a
with
police procedural
yeah. It's one of the I like to call them
film.
mid-afternoon specials where you stay home at school, you're sick from school, and you put on HBO or
This just happens to
Stars,
be on
and it's
FX.
on it. Yeah, and you put it on halfway through it. You don't really care about watching the beginning, but you're gonna go ahead and continue watching it just cause.
I can
Um,
see that.
um,
I'll say this: Robin Williams does a really good job. He, as a comedian in this film, was a really good villain.
yeah. So I was gonna ask you that. Do you think that they were? Do you think there were any miscastings in the film? Um, I think Robin Williams is adequate as the killer. I think
Hmm.
Hilary Swank is probably the best choice out of all three. I think she's
I actually think
really,
Al Pacino is probably the miscast.
and I agree. I think Al Pacino was miscasted completely. I think even if it was 10 years
They
younger,
should have got Guy Pearce
or even Alex Steelbolt. Come on, man, give your boy
or Brad Pitt. Yeah.
give your boy a
Hey,
movie.
Stellan Skarsgård speaks English. Get him.
Brought him back for the reboot or remake. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Pacino fits. I really don't. I mean, Pacino's name has a lot of weight to it, so I think that's why they added him into the film just to kind of sell. I mean, it did sell. It made
Yeah.
$100 million off of box office at the box office. But I don't think I don't. He just doesn't work. I don't know what it was. I just for whatever reason I just couldn't. Maybe it's because I watched too much The Godfather, and I think of him as this criminal boss that I'm like he
He
couldn't
just
be a
doesn't do
cop.
much.
There's no way.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you
Yeah.
said, he doesn't do a whole lot. He's very stiff. He's definitely starting to show his age, especially when he's chasing Robin Williams throughout the city. That one chase scene.
Yeah. When they're
And I'm
on like
like,
the
okay,
docks or
yeah,
something like that.
you guys are doing the one thing where it's clearly a stunt double, so you do these 12 million cuts, and then we can see the back of him, but not the front of him because it's a stunt double. And we're gonna show the front of him, but it's gonna be a completely different running style. So that's how you know they were using a stunt double. I just I didn't like Pacino in this movie. Um, but some good things out of this movie because I don't like starting with criticism is Hilary Swank. I think I really liked Hilary Swank. Her. I think she's very likable. She's very believable. Where she's like meeting her hero, this guy she
Yeah.
idolizes, and then she starts to question everything that he's done. Uh,
Yeah.
and
For
at the
sure.
end, she's like, So I think she's probably the best casting out of the big three.
And I'll say, I already brought up how I liked Robin Williams in this movie. I mean, I just like it when comedians play dramatic roles.
Yeah,
So I'll just say it again. That I think he just does a good job.
yeah, I agree. I thought he was good. I thought he was. Could you have gotten somebody better? Maybe. Who was somebody better? I don't know. I think he was very well casted for what he
Yeah.
was.
I mean, the character is a creepy guy, and Robin Williams
He
kind of
comes off
pulls off
creepy, right?
creepy.
Yeah, he pulls off
Yeah.
the creepy. Maybe it's because we're so used to him being
Pulls off
funny
creepy.
and you know him being a little more relaxed kind of creeps us out. It's like a meta thing
Yeah.
that's going on. And maybe it's just how talented Robin Williams was. I miss that man. Um,
I'll say this too: the setting in Alaska, I think, also works very well towards Nolan's style. He's a very cold director, and this is a very cold movie.
yeah, you could just feel the coldness, right? Whenever they get off the plane. I
So, and
did
all
like,
those shots of like the glaciers.
yeah, that was it's so. I mean, that's Wally P, man. Wally P. He does this for
He's
the
very
rest of his
slick.
collaborations with his Nolan. He has great establishing shots.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I did like how Nolan captures that feeling of insomnia and sleep deprivation when you know Pacino's
Yeah, he's
tripping
putting the stuff
balls.
up on his windows. Yeah.
Because I've been there a
So
couple nights where I'm just so tired I can barely stand, and I'm starting to see things, and I that that was pretty. I feel like that was pretty accurate to what
yeah.
to what it is.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's just overall, it's just okay.
so I got a question. Do you believe? So Pacino shoots his partner, right?
Mm.
And we're very clearly led to believe that it was an accident. Do you believe him when they ask,
We're
"Hey,
all led to
was it
believe it.
actually an accident?" And he's like, "I don't even know anymore." Do you believe that?
Yeah, I think that's the point. He's
Because
so sleep deprived. He's so in his own head, and he's so
see,
up
but
his own ass.
he wasn't even there that long. He was only there for a day when he shot him. So I don't know if you can blame it on the sleep deprivation. I don't know if you can say, "Well, I meant to kill him because I didn't want him to testify against me." Like I don't, because that's the whole reason, right? That's the whole thing is like Pacino is trying to have this internal struggle of, did I mean to shoot him because he's testifying against me, or was it an accident for real? And I don't believe it. I mean, when he says that, we're supposed to believe it, but I just nothing up to that point made me think, oh yeah, no, Pacino would
I think
kill
that's
this
part
guy.
of the problem. I think that's part of the problem with the movie is that nothing up to that point makes you believe really anything about Pacino.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is
Just
true.
just
So
kind of there. Not that bad.
Insomnia brought us Warner Brothers and Nolan together, but didn't really bring us much. It's kind of a missable movie. I would probably put it in the C tier.
Yeah, it's a C tier. It's pass. It passes, but
But
it's
barely.
just barely. However, the next film, it's Batman. I think it's Batman Begins.
Yeah, start us. You want to
We're
start
going
us off with
for that.
Batman Begins?
All right, so you're doing the budgets. It was a 1 point or a $150 million budget. This is Batman. It's still Warner Brothers, but it's Batman. So this is the superhero movie territory. We're talking in the $1 million budgets now. The
Yeah,
big $100 million.
that's crazy.
This is still 2005 though, so it's somewhat like, just for the context, this is 2005. This is kind of dark ages of superhero movies. We're talking like the trash, like the Daredevil, the Ben Affleck Daredevil, Halle Berry Catwoman,
The Incredible Hulk
the
by
Nicolas Cage Ghost Rider.
Eric Bana.
Yeah. So any of the X-Men films. So
Whoa, whoa, whoa! You take your word. You take that back.
so superhero movies exist, but they're not like what they are today.
Yep, 100%.
Most of them are trash.
Yep.
So this is, I guess, a bit of a risk.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely. I think. I mean, it's just a risk just to give this relatively unknown director your biggest franchise at the time in Batman, and
Yeah.
B $150 million to go make a film.
Especially when his previous films are like willing to be experimental and confusing.
Yep. Yep. And the fact that you're
He's willing
saying,
to say, I will throw conventional storytelling out the window. Sure, I'll make a superhero film.
yeah. Well, actually, I heard. So what I read was Nolan went to them, which was pretty interesting. It was like, hey, I want to make a Batman movie, and they were like, okay.
Just the fact that they were like, okay, you're the
Yeah. No,
unconventional guy. We'll let you do it.
that's what's crazy is they were just like, okay. I think that says more about where Warner Brothers was at with the Batman character, because I mean, this is coming off I believe this is the George Clooney Batmans, right? Batman and Robins,
Yeah,
the two of them that are
the Joel Schumacher.
with the bat nipples, where they're super trashy. I don't want to talk about those. Those get me upset.
That's the context of superhero movies at this point.
Yeah, we're just laying the foundation for this topic, because this trilogy, this movie, but this trilogy as a whole does so much for the not only comic book movies but just film in general for the next, what is it, 2005 to 2012, so 7 years.
Yeah,
They do
pretty much. Nearly
so
an entire
much.
decade defined by this trilogy.
Oh, I think so too, and we're gonna get into the Dark Knight in a little bit, but I got some takes about the Dark Knight. But
So I'll say this about Batman Begins. It stars Christopher Nolan, or not Christopher Nolan. Yes, he stars in the film himself. Christian Bale. I get
Yep.
those two confused all the time. Christian Bale, Michael Caine, two mainstays of Christopher Nolan. He loves these guys.
From now on, yeah. From here on out.
Liam Neeson, Katie Holmes, who only appears in this film. She does not come back for the next few. Gary Oldman as James Gordon. He's probably one of the better James Gordons out there. I think he does the very good old-timey cop. Gary Oldman just sells every role he's in, though.
I agree.
Let's see who else is in this film. Ooh, Ken Watanabe, who is another long-term Christopher Nolan collaborator.
We'll see him again in a couple
We'll see
years.
him again for sure. And then Morgan Freeman, man himself.
God himself. What are you talking about?
God himself. This was basically Insomnia was like a star-studded cast. This is a star-studded cast as well.
Yeah, but I think the difference between this Batman Begins and I think Insomnia was chosen for him, and Batman Begins is him choosing. And that's why I think this star-studded cast works. And this also works more because it's actually his screenplay and not somebody else's. But I think this star-studded cast works, and there's almost more of chemistry within the cast because of Nolan's. This is him choosing who he wants to work with.
That's true.
And you could,
I would agree with that.
If you watch Insomnia and Batman Begins back to back, you could tell a huge difference with the directing of the actors.
I'd agree with that. Yeah, for sure. I feel like he was kind of feeling his oats with directing big named casts in Insomnia, and now he's like, I can, because he chose to have a star-studded cast. Mm-hmm. He wanted that specifically, so he kind of had learned his lesson with Insomnia, and he knew what to do this time around.
Yeah, I agree, and it shows. The acting is in this whole trilogy as a whole, but in this film too, is very well made, very well done. Sorry.
Also co-written with David S. Goyer, who is another good collaborator with Nolan. He does a lot of good superhero films. He and J.J. Abrams, I think, are also.
He also does some of the Black Ops games.
Really?
Yeah. Black Ops 1, 2, and the new one, Cold War.
Not bad.
So
not bad at all. Yeah, he's kind of a specific like superhero and action kind of guy. That's what he does.
Yeah, you can tell he's more of the set piece, grandioso kind of writer, I feel like.
Yeah.
Because he also does Man of Steel and Batman vs. Superman, and those movies also have flaws, but the grandioso effects are not because of him.
They're there.
Yeah, definitely. This is his first collaboration with two people. I want to see if you can... Two mainstays. I want to see if you know...
Hans Zimmer.
Okay, you got Hans, the man himself.
Hans Zimmer. And...
one more.
Who's the other person? I don't know who the other person is.
He's worked with them ever since, except for on Tenet.
Is it gonna be? It's gonna be his editor, I assume.
It is his editor, Lee Smith. Lee Smith will work with him from this film up until Dunkirk. So
I'll say this too. This film specifically, Following and Memento were very experimental, and their editing styles leaned heavily into the storytelling. Insomnia was just kind of there. It didn't really draw attention to itself, and it didn't really say anything. But this film, and I think beginning in this film, he really begins to define himself, and how he edits just scene to scene, moment to moment, it really begins to show itself and define itself. Quick cutting. There are not many establishing shots, actually. He really just jumps.
Yeah.
Scene to scene, line to line.
He just for better or worse, he doesn't take time to set things up a whole lot. We're just gonna go, and that's what I like about this movie, is from the get go. You know, you have that flashback with young Bruce and Rachel, and Bruce crashes into the Batcave, and then Bruce Wayne is in prison, and you're like, wait, what? Like, his parents didn't die yet? And then it's like 20 minutes later, oh, okay, his parents died. So
yeah, that's what I really liked about this film. I think Nolan really did a good job covering the base of the character without acting like people didn't know who Batman was.
Yeah, yeah. Because everybody knows who
This
Batman
isn't,
is, and it's like the Peter
yeah,
Parker thing where every super Spider-Man movie that we have has to show Uncle Ben dying. But this
yeah,
movie,
seriously.
his parents dying is shown for 5 minutes, maybe, right? That's like a 5 minute scene when they're in the theater,
Yeah,
and then it's not. You can feel his parents' death weighing on him
they
without having
somewhat,
to keep showing us. You know.
yeah, they kind of reinvent his origin, where it's not so much the death that harps on him as much as his relationship to his parents,
Yeah.
specifically his relationship to his father. They really kind of reinvent little moments. I think that's what made this film work, is that they kind of almost had the trilogy in mind. They were saying this is one character, Bruce Wayne. How do we establish him so that we can follow him? Not just establish him so that we know what he's like, but so that he can be a character. Not many
Hmm.
people do that with superheroes.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think
Knockoff Superman.
yeah, and I think that's the problem with Marvel movies that I have is uh, you don't really feel like the characters grow. You kind of just feel like, oh, these characters, they have to deal with something. They
Deal with it.
they deal with it, and then they go to a team up movie 2 movies from now. It's like, okay, but
Yeah.
where's the character development? Like when do we learn more about Bruce Wayne as a person and what he does? And
Yeah.
I think Nolan tackles that. I think Nolan saw a lot of character potential with Batman. I think
If there
he's
was
and
any superhero, I guarantee you Nolan would relate to, it would be Batman.
oh, 100%. I think it's Batman. It's probably Spider-Man who have the more, well, maybe not Spider-Man, but Batman for sure because he has such a dark origin and he has such a dark and realistic take on life.
Yeah.
He's not
And
flying through
there's
buildings and shooting laser beams and all this other crap.
doesn't
He's
have superpowers.
he's just beating
He has
people
no
up and using
superpowers
his brain.
whatsoever.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So that's why I think that's why he chose Batman out of all of these characters.
Anyone he could. Yeah, absolutely. And this film, I think, also as a first Batman movie in the trilogy, what I like about this film, there's a lot of campiness to it.
Yeah, yeah.
There's still a little bit of that Joel
I was gonna
Schumacher.
say that I watched it last night and I was surprised on how much it. I don't want to say it's a comic book movie because that sounds like I'm berating comic book movies, but it is very much a comic book movie. Like there's a little goofiness to it. There's a little bit of every scene has a one liner by
Nice
a
joke.
character where they're making a joke.
Yeah,
Um, it's not forced, but at times you're like, okay, that didn't really need to be
it's a bit
there.
of an eye roll.
But it's nothing. Yeah, it's nothing super offensive or anything. The
Doesn't take
this
itself too seriously.
yeah the part where the part where I started laughing and I was like, wait, is this the same trilogy? Was when they're Batman's getting so he goes to the Arkham Asylum, right? And he gets cornered by the police, and he pulls out the bat, the thing that calls the bats, and then he
Yeah.
throws it down the staircase and goes with the bats. And I'm like, okay, this is still a comic book movie. This isn't a crime drama like
Yeah.
The Dark Knight is. This is still a little goofy and a little fun. Um,
Yeah.
and I think I liked it. I it was very refreshing. I want to say because I watched The Dark Knight like a million times, so and I haven't really watched the other
Well, I
two that
think that's
much.
also what you need. I think that's what it needs. Is it had to be accessible.
Yeah.
Had to be a little comedic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
And
we need.
Batman is an extremely campy character.
He needed 11-year-olds to be able to go into the theaters and watch it, just so he could get, you know, that character that
Yeah.
the movie really just to be produced, but also for
Speaking of which,
people to relate to this.
something this film also starts a trend with Christopher Nolan's career. And this is one that I actually don't like, but regardless, this was his first PG-13 film, and every one of his
Yep.
films since is PG-13. Say what you want about that, because I have some things to say, but he's definitely looking for accessibility and a larger audience. This movie, and he hits it.
Yeah,
This is a great film.
this is a good foray into the Batman character that Nolan makes, and
It's
it's
a B
groundbreaking.
plus. Yeah.
I think I put
Well, I
it.
wouldn't say that this is groundbreaking. Actually, I would disagree with that.
Well, it's groundbreaking in that it allowed. I think it sets a foundation for him, so it kind of is groundbreaking in a way. I mean, it's foundation setting.
Maybe foundation setting. Yes, I think groundbreaking is definitely going to be The Dark Knight. But
Yeah,
there's a reason why, and I will get to that when we get to that.
yeah, we'll get to it.
Unless
I had two questions
anything
for
you
you.
want to say about Batman
Yeah,
Begins?
I had two
Yes.
questions for you. One, is Katie Holmes good or bad in this? We kind of talked about this, but I kind of want to delve into it more because I have interesting takes on Maggie Gyllenhaal, who
Gyllenhaal.
plays Rachel, who replaces her as Rachel
Yeah.
in Dark Knight.
Replaces Rachel in Dark Knight.
Yeah. So I wanted to get on your take on the
I
Katie
think
Holmes version.
she's not bad. The character is kind of a bland character. She's kind of just a damsel in distress.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't think she does too bad. I mean, it's hard to play a character who kind of just exists to get rescued.
The damsel in
It is
distress.
jarring. It is jarring to go from one film to another. It's the same character played by two different actors.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's my issue with Maggie. One of my issues. But I don't want to get into that too much because we still have a discussion on the Dark Knight. But yeah, I think I went into I went into this movie thinking that Katie was a superior Rachel. And then I watched it again and I think they're equal. I think they both have issues and they both have strengths. But maybe it's
how they play the character. I think they're equal. I think it's the character who is a little
flawed.
on the fence.
Yeah, that's fair, and that goes more into like what we were saying about Nolan, how he's sometimes his characters are very one-dimensional and don't have a lot of depth, especially side characters. But yeah, and a second question: how do you feel about the Gotham that is in the Batman Begins? Batman Begins.
That's a good question.
So I like that it's original. It's after watching The Dark Knight a million times and going back and watching the Batman Begins. I don't know why I keep calling it the Batman. Batman Begins. It's kind of nice to not watch it and see like, oh, there's Chicago or there's Pittsburgh. It's original and it's a new idea. I also don't like it because in The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, the city completely changes. So it's a little jarring.
I was like, what I like about Gotham in Batman Begins is that it's actually a very like almost colorful city.
Yeah, and it goes back to that point where we were talking about how this is very much still a comic book movie, and it's still based in a comic book because Gotham is a very lively, colorful, bombastic city that you find in comic books.
There's Gotham, and then there's like Arkham Asylum, and they're like night and day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Arkham Asylum 2, it's like, why didn't you bring it back? But I digress.
Yeah. Dark Knight is like everything is Arkham Asylum by that point.
Yeah, the Dark Knight's just crazy.
Any final thoughts on Batman Begins?
No, I think it was a very serviceable, not serviceable. I think it's a great origin story. I think it's a new take on the superhero franchises. I think it brought us Nolan into the foray of mainstream. It turned him into kind of a blockbuster hit. He'll get more of a blockbuster hit later in his career, but I think this is the first time people are like, "Oh, dope! We can trust this guy with a lot of money and a big key to our franchise."
Oh yeah,
and
it's also just for a period of time in which almost every superhero movie was trash. It's a great superhero movie.
Yeah, and it shows us. It shows. I don't want to say us, but it shows filmmakers and studios like, hey, we can do more with superhero characters than just have them beat up a random dude for an hour and a half. And I think you
It
see that.
has the edginess. It has the edginess of 2000 superheroes, but it just keeps a little bit of that, you know, campiness and comedic element that it's never so egregious.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I
It's
have
just
this one
not
in
Ben
the.
Affleck Daredevil.
Yeah, yeah. Or Eric Bana's Incredible Hulk.
No, but I have seen Edward Norton Incredible Hulk.
Oh, well, that one's bad too. But Eric Bana's is. Oh my god, it's an abomination. It's like if I went into what is it, After Effects and made my own Incredible Hulk. It's I don't know how that
Is that
movie
the
got
Ang Lee?
released. The what?
Isn't that the Ang Lee one? The Ang Lee film?
Is it? I don't know who directs it, but I know Eric Bana is in it. Like he stars. Let me look it up.
That's not a good period in time for. It's even amazing that superhero films are what they are today. When you look back at the 2000s,
And it's all because of the Dark Knight trilogy. Yeah, Ang Lee. Ang Lee did
honestly,
direct this one.
there you go. There you go.
Funny. So that was part 1 of 3 for our discussion on Christopher Nolan and his career. I want to thank Frank Lancaster for supplying the intro music as well as the outro music. Part 2 should hopefully come out sometime within a week or so of the release of this podcast. So to make sure to subscribe to us, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Instagram to get that update on when part 2 will come out. Until then, thank you guys. Stay safe. Have a wonderful night.